My name is Hannah Wilson, 32 years old, the forgotten middle child sandwiched between my brilliant older sister Jessica and my charming younger brother Tyler. Growing up in suburban Connecticut with high-achieving parents meant constant pressure to excel. Despite working twice as hard, I was always half as good in their eyes. At our recent family dinner, when Mom sneered that familiar comparison to Jessica, something inside me finally snapped. Instead of shrinking away, I calmly responded with words that left the entire room in shock. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and hit that subscribe button to join me on this journey of finally standing up for myself. I grew up in Westport, Connecticut, in a beautiful colonial-style house with perfectly manicured lawns and an impressive three-car garage. From the outside, everything looked picture-perfect, but inside those walls I learned early that perfection was expected, not celebrated. My father, James Wilson, built his reputation as one of the most successful corporate attorneys in the state. His office walls were covered with awards and recognitions, much like our living room showcased his golf trophies and law school honors. He rarely raised his voice, but his disappointment could fill a room without a single word. My mother, Diana, was a former beauty queen who transitioned into a successful real estate career after marriage. She maintained her pageant, perfect appearance well into her 60s, with weekly salon appointments and a closet full of designer clothes. Her perfectionism extended beyond appearance into every aspect of our lives. Dinner plates needed to be arranged just so holiday decorations required professional quality, and most importantly, her children needed to reflect well on her social standing. Jessica, 5 years my senior, seemed born to fulfill their expectations. She was valedictorian of her class, graduated from Yale with honors, and became a respected cardiologist at 30. By 35, she had married Andrew, a neurosurgeon from a wealthy family, bought a mansion in Greenwich, and was featured in Connecticut Magazine as one of the state's most influential women under 40. Her Christmas cards showed a perfect blonde family with two perfectly behaved children in coordinating outfits. Then there was Tyler, 3 years younger than me, the baby of the family and undeniable favorite. He inherited Mom's striking good looks and Dad's natural charisma. Even when he got into trouble, his charming smile and quick wit would dissolve their anger instantly. He breezed through school on natural talent rather than hard work, was captain of both the football and lacrosse teams, and collected friends as easily as I collected rejections. And then there was me, Hannah, perpetually in the middle, and perpetually invisible, unless being unfavorably compared to Jessica. Where she was naturally brilliant, I was average. Where she was poised and graceful, I was awkward and unsure. Where she excelled in science and mathematics, I struggled through basic algebra. The only subjects I enjoyed were art and English, which my parents dismissed as impractical hobbies rather than potential career paths. I have vivid memories of bringing home report cards throughout elementary school. An A- in science would be met with, "Jessica never got anything less than an A+ in science." A first-place ribbon in the school art show was brushed aside with, "That's nice, dear, but Jessica just got accepted into the state honors program." Even my appearance became a battlefield. At 12, when I was going through an awkward growth spurt, Mom enrolled me in posture classes because Jessica never slouched like that at your age. As we entered our teenage years, the comparisons intensified. Jessica was class president, prom queen, and received a full scholarship to Yale. I joined the yearbook committee, dated a nice boy from my chemistry class, and got accepted to Connecticut State University with minimal scholarship offers. Mom spent weeks telling everyone about Jessica's accomplishments while relegating mine to "Hannah's doing fine too." Dad was less openly critical, but enabled Mom's behavior through his silence. During particularly harsh criticism sessions, he would disappear into his study or garage. The few times I sought his protection, he would pat my shoulder awkwardly and say, "Your mother just wants what's best for you. Try harder next time." His emotional absence taught me another painful lesson. Even if I spoke up, nobody would really listen. I tried everything to win their approval throughout my childhood. I joined every club Jessica had been part of, took the same advanced classes despite struggling, and even tried out for the same sports teams. The results were predictable second-place finishes if I placed at all, and constant reminders that Jessica had done it better faster and with more grace. By high school graduation, I had internalized a devastating message: no matter how hard I tried, I would never be good enough. The summer before college, Jessica graduated medical school at the top of her class. At her graduation dinner, Mom proudly announced, "This is what real achievement looks like, Hannah. Maybe you should reconsider your major." I had been planning to study graphic design, the one area where I'd found both success and joy. That night, I changed my application to pre-med, setting myself up for years of misery and failure. My college experience at Connecticut State couldn't have been more different from Jessica's ivy-covered years at Yale. While she thrived in the prestigious environment, making lifelong connections and graduating with honors, I struggled through basic science courses and watched my GPA plummet. After 2 miserable semesters of organic chemistry and failing grades, my academic advisor gently suggested I reconsider my path. "Hannah, I see you light up in your art electives, but you look defeated in every science class. Have you considered that perhaps medicine isn't your calling?" she asked during a particularly tearful advising session. The question felt simultaneously terrifying and liberating. Switching majors meant admitting failure, confirming everything my mother believed about me. But continuing meant years of struggling through subjects that made me deeply unhappy. After weeks of internal debate, I finally switched to visual communications, and for the first time started earning grades I was proud of. When I called home with the news, Mom's disappointment traveled clearly through the phone line. "Jessica never gave up when things got difficult," she said with a heavy sigh. "I suppose not everyone has her determination. At least you're still in college. I guess you can always teach art to elementary school children." The backhanded encouragement was typical, simultaneously acknowledging my choice while diminishing its value. College graduation brought more stark contrasts. Jessica's graduation had been a major family event with expensive gifts and a week-long celebration. Mine warranted a Sunday dinner where the conversation quickly turned to Jessica's residency and Tyler's college applications. My degree was referred to as "that art thing" by my mother whenever her friends inquired about my progress. Post-graduation brought a series of false starts and setbacks as I tried to launch my career. I bounced between entry-level positions at small marketing firms, worked as an administrative assistant at an advertising agency, hoping to move up, and even tried freelancing without much success. Meanwhile, Jessica completed her residency and began her cardiology practice, buying her first luxury car and condominium before I could afford to move out of my shared apartment with 3 roommates. The turning point came 5 years after graduation when I was laid off from a struggling design agency during budget cuts. Instead of looking for another job working for someone else, I decided to rebuild my portfolio and focus exclusively on freelance graphic design. I worked around the clock, taking any projects I could find to build my reputation and skills. I designed logos for local businesses, created websites for startups, and slowly built a modest but growing client base. My mother was predictably unimpressed with my career choice. "Drawing pictures for businesses," she would say dismissively when describing my work to her friends. "Jessica just performed a groundbreaking procedure at the hospital." The comparison was so expected I barely flinched anymore. While my career was finding its footing, Jessica's life continued its picture-perfect trajectory. She married Andrew in a lavish ceremony featured in Connecticut Wedding magazine, bought a stunning colonial on 3 acres in Greenwich, and continued collecting professional accolades. At family gatherings, her accomplishments were the main topic of conversation, while my growing design business was treated as a cute hobby. My personal life faced similar scrutiny and disappointment. I dated Michael, a kind and supportive music teacher, for 3 years. We were discussing marriage when he came to a holiday dinner at my parents' home. After witnessing my mother's treatment of me and my father's passive acceptance, he began to see me differently. "Why do you let them talk to you that way?" he asked afterward. When I couldn't give him a satisfactory answer, our relationship began to unravel. He eventually left, citing my inability to stand up for myself as a fundamental incompatibility. The breakup confirmed what my family had always implied: I wasn't worthy of lasting happiness. Despite these personal setbacks, my business slowly grew. By my 30th birthday, I had enough steady clients to lease a small studio space outside my apartment and hire a part-time assistant. I moved to a smaller but nicer apartment that I could afford without roommates, a modest achievement that gave me immense pride. For the first time, I was truly financially independent, relying on no one else for support. My parents were unimpressed by these developments. "It's cute that you're playing businesswoman," Mom commented when she saw my new business cards. "But wouldn't you be better off with a real job that has benefits and retirement? You're not getting any younger and without a husband. You need to think about security." I smiled and changed the subject, knowing any defense would only invite more criticism. What my parents didn't see or chose not to acknowledge was that I was finally building confidence in my abilities. My clients valued my creativity and professionalism. My work was being recognized in local design competitions. I was developing a distinct style that attracted clients specifically looking for my aesthetic. While these victories were small compared to Jessica's medical breakthroughs, they were mine earned through persistence and genuine passion. Around my 31st birthday, subtle but significant shifts began occurring in our family dynamics. Dad retired from his law practice earlier than planned, citing exhaustion and stress. The confident, commanding presence that had defined him throughout my childhood seemed diminished somehow. He spent more time at home, often sitting silently in his study rather than playing golf or networking with colleagues as he had for decades. Meanwhile, cracks were beginning to show in Jessica's seemingly perfect life. During our monthly sister lunch, a tradition I maintained despite the constant comparisons, I noticed she checked her phone obsessively and seemed distracted. When I asked if everything was all right, she brushed off my concern with practiced ease, but not before I caught a glimpse of tears quickly blinked away. She canceled our next two lunches, citing busy schedules at the hospital. Tyler, who had been the golden child throughout our childhood, suddenly dropped out of his MBA program at Dartmouth and moved to California to find himself. The family was shocked when he announced via group text that he was working at a surf shop in San Diego and taking time to explore what really matters in life. Mom initially treated it as a phase, telling friends he was taking a sabbatical to explore entrepreneurial opportunities in California. But as months passed with no sign of him returning to his previous path, her explanations became more strained. As these changes unfolded, I found myself unexpectedly becoming the family's stable center. When Dad needed help setting up his retirement accounts, he called me instead of Jessica, who had always handled family financial matters. When Mom couldn't figure out how to use her new phone, I spent hours patiently walking her through the basics. When the roof leaked during a major storm, I was the one who coordinated with insurance and contractors, while Jessica was too busy and Tyler was too far away. Despite taking on these additional responsibilities, the criticism continued unabated. Mom would call for help with her computer, then spend the entire visit commenting on my sensible clothing and asking when I planned to do something with my hair like Jessica's expensive highlights. Dad would thank me for helping with paperwork, then immediately ask if I was saving enough for retirement, since my little business probably didn't provide adequate benefits like Jessica's medical practice. The most significant change emerged gradually over several months as I noticed concerning patterns in my parents' finances. While helping Dad organize his retirement paperwork, I discovered they had refinanced their house twice in recent years. When I helped Mom with online banking, I saw several credit card statements with substantial balances. Most concerning were the past due notices for property taxes I found while helping organize their home office. When I gently tried to discuss these issues, both parents brushed off my concerns. "Your father made very good money all these years," Mom said dismissively. "We know how to manage our finances." Dad was equally evasive, changing the subject whenever I brought up retirement planning or household expenses. As their financial situation became clearer to me, Jessica grew increasingly distant from family responsibilities. She started missing Sunday dinners, sending elaborate flower arrangements instead of appearing in person. When Mom needed a procedure for her ongoing back pain, Jessica recommended a colleague rather than handling it herself. Phone calls went to voicemail, texts received delayed brief responses. The perfect daughter was slowly extracting herself from family obligations. Without discussion or acknowledgement, I began picking up the slack. I started paying for groceries when visiting my parents, claiming I was just picking up a few things. I handled household repairs under the guise of having a guy who gives me a discount through my business. When I noticed their property tax bill sitting unpaid for the second quarter, I quietly paid it online and never mentioned it. My resentment grew alongside these responsibilities. I was working 60-hour weeks to maintain my business while handling increasing family obligations, yet still received nothing but criticism and unfavorable comparisons. Meanwhile, Jessica maintained her pedestal of perfection while becoming increasingly absent, and Tyler was celebrated for finding his authentic path while contributing nothing to family needs. The situation reached a breaking point when Dad had a minor heart attack 3 months before the fateful dinner. In the hospital waiting room, Mom fretted about insurance coverage and co-payments in a way that seemed excessive for people who had always projected financial security. When Jessica finally arrived 6 hours after being notified, Mom transformed instantly from worried to radiant, introducing her to hospital staff as my daughter the cardiologist, while I sat invisibly with the insurance paperwork. After Dad was released, I drove them home and helped settle him in. As Mom walked me to the door, she shocked me by asking if I could loan them money for the hospital bills. Just until your father's retirement accounts process the withdrawal, she explained. The amount she requested was substantial, nearly emptying my emergency fund, but I agreed without hesitation. Family comes first, I had always been taught. That loan was followed by another for their property insurance, then another for car repairs. None were ever repaid or even acknowledged again after the checks were cashed. When I tried bringing it up during a Sunday dinner, Mom changed the subject so smoothly that I questioned whether I had actually spoken the words aloud. As these financial entanglements deepened, my mother's drinking, which had always been present but controlled, increased noticeably. The one glass of Chardonnay with dinner became a bottle. Afternoon bridge club with the ladies now resulted in slurred phone calls by evening. With increased drinking came less filtered comments, more cutting criticisms, and frequent tearful reminiscences about Jessica's achievements and Tyler's potential, with pointed silences where my accomplishments should have been mentioned. The Sunday dinner that changed everything was meant to be a celebration of Dad's recovery, scheduled exactly 1 month after his heart attack. I arrived early to help Mom prepare, noticing immediately that she had already started on the wine, a flush spreading across her cheeks as she aggressively chopped vegetables. The dining room was set with the good china and crystal, a level of formality usually reserved for major holidays or Jessica's visits. A fresh floral arrangement sat in the center of the table, professionally designed, rather than Mom's usual homemade centerpieces. The house had been thoroughly cleaned, scented candles burning in every room. Jessica's coming at 6, Mom announced, a mixture of excitement and anxiety in her voice. She's bringing news. The way she emphasized the last word made it clear she expected something momentous, perhaps a pregnancy announcement or major career achievement. She didn't mention that I had been there since 3, helping prepare the meal she would take credit for. Dad sat in his recliner in the living room, looking significantly older than he had just months before. His heart attack had left him physically diminished, his robust frame now appearing shrunken in his favorite sweater. The confident attorney who had commanded rooms throughout my childhood now seemed uncertain, checking his watch repeatedly and asking multiple times when dinner would be served. At 6:30, with no sign of Jessica and no response to texts, Mom's drinking accelerated. By 7, when Jessica's luxury SUV finally pulled into the driveway, Mom had finished one bottle of wine and opened another. She rushed to the door like an excited teenager, while I remained in the kitchen finishing the meal preparation she had abandoned. Jessica entered in a whirlwind of expensive perfume and apologies. "Emergency consultation with a patient," she explained, kissing Mom's cheek and handing her a bottle of premium champagne. "We should chill this for later when I share my news." She acknowledged Dad with a careful hug, mindful of his recent surgery, then gave me a distracted wave from across the room. Tyler joined by video call from California, his tanned face filling the tablet screen I had propped at one end of the table. His long hair and beaded necklace were dramatic departures from the preppy appearance he had maintained throughout college. Mom fussed with the tablet angle, determined to include him despite his physical absence. The initial conversation flowed pleasantly enough, centered around Dad's recovery and Tyler's latest surfing adventures. I shared some news about a design award my studio had recently won, a significant industry recognition that had resulted in several new client inquiries. "That's nice, dear," Mom said absently, already turning toward Jessica. "But we're dying to hear Jessica's news. You've been so mysterious lately." Jessica smiled, clearly enjoying being the center of attention. "Well, I wasn't going to announce this until dessert, but since Mom's so eager—" She paused dramatically. "I've been appointed as the youngest ever chief of cardiology at Greenwich Hospital." The table erupted in enthusiasm. Mom actually clapped her hands together in delight, while Dad beamed with pride. Tyler whooped from the tablet. I offered sincere congratulations, genuinely happy for her success, while simultaneously aware of the familiar ache of inadequacy settling in my chest. "We always knew you were destined for greatness," Mom gushed, pouring herself more wine. "From the time you won your first spelling bee in second grade, I told everyone my Jessica was special. The hospital board said they've never promoted anyone to department chief at 37. Jessica continued, accepting the praise as her due. "There was an official announcement in the medical journal last week." "This calls for the champagne," Mom declared, although she was clearly past the point where more alcohol was advisable. As she unsteadily made her way to the kitchen, I followed to help, concerned about her handling glassware in her condition. "I can open it, Mom," I offered, reaching for the bottle. She pulled it away sharply. "Jessica's celebration should be done properly. I think I know how to open champagne, Hannah. I've had plenty of reasons to celebrate Jessica over the years." The implication that my achievements had never warranted champagne hung in the air between us. We returned to the dining room, where Jessica was showing Dad something on her phone, her voice animated as she described her new responsibilities. Tyler had apparently stepped away from his camera, the screen showing only his empty apartment backdrop. As we ate dinner, Mom continued drinking, her words becoming slightly slurred and her volume increasing. The conversation repeatedly circled back to Jessica's achievement, each round adding more superlatives to the accomplishment. Between these celebratory spirals, Mom inserted questions about Tyler's temporary lifestyle experiment and when he planned to get serious again. I remained mostly silent, responding when directly addressed, but otherwise focusing on helping Dad, who was struggling slightly with cutting his food. During a brief lull, I attempted to gently introduce the subject that had been weighing on my mind. "Mom, Dad, I wanted to talk to you about some of the bills I've been helping with," I began carefully. "I think we should discuss a more sustainable plan going forward." Mom's face immediately hardened. "This is hardly the time to discuss such matters, Hannah. We're celebrating Jessica's achievement." "I understand that," I continued, maintaining a calm tone. "But it's been 3 months since I paid the property tax bill, and there's another quarter coming due soon. Plus the hospital co-pays from Dad's surgery and the—" "Hannah has been helping you with bills," Jessica interrupted, looking genuinely surprised as she turned toward our parents. "It's just temporary," Dad mumbled, suddenly very interested in arranging his remaining food on his plate. "Your father's retirement transition has created some cash flow issues," Mom said dismissively. "Nothing for anyone to concern themselves with." Tyler's face reappeared on the tablet. "Wait, are you guys having money problems? Why didn't anyone tell me?" "There are no problems," Mom insisted, her voice rising. "Hannah is exaggerating the situation as usual." "I'm not exaggerating," I said, finding unexpected strength in my voice. "I've paid over $30,000 in various bills over the past few months. Money that was never presented as a gift, but as loans that would be repaid." The room fell uncomfortably silent. Jessica looked between our parents with new awareness in her eyes. Dad continued to stare at his plate. Tyler leaned closer to his camera, his expression concerned. $30,000, Jessica finally asked. "From your design business, the one Mom always calls your little hobby?" Mom's face flushed deeper, whether from alcohol or embarrassment was unclear. "This is completely inappropriate dinner conversation. Hannah has always had a flair for drama." It's not drama, Mom. I have records of every payment and copies of all the bills. I'm not complaining about helping, but I think we need to be honest about the situation and make a sustainable plan. Mom's glass hit the table harder than necessary, wine sloshing dangerously close to the rim. You know what your problem has always been, Hannah. You think too small. If you had applied yourself like Jessica, gone into a real profession instead of doodling for a living, maybe you wouldn't be counting pennies and worrying about helping your parents through a temporary situation. The familiar criticism stung, but I maintained my composure. My business is doing well, but that's not the point. The point is transparency about what's happening and a plan going forward. Mom's expression turned nasty, the filter of politeness dissolved by wine and frustration. Her voice dropped to a sneering tone I recognized from countless childhood humiliations. You'll never be as good as your sister. Never. She's achieved more by 37 than you'll accomplish in your entire life. If you spent less time worrying about our finances and more time improving your own situation, maybe you wouldn't be so jealous of her success. The dining room went completely still. In previous years, I would have absorbed the blow silently, perhaps excused myself to cry in the bathroom before returning with a placating smile. But something fundamental had shifted in me during the months of supporting my parents while receiving nothing but criticism in return. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. When I spoke, my voice was steady and clear. Then ask her to pay your bills. The silence that followed my statement seemed to stretch for an eternity. Mom's mouth opened and closed without sound, like a fish suddenly pulled from water. Dad's gaze finally lifted from his plate, his eyes wide with shock. Jessica sat frozen wine glass halfway to her lips. Even Tyler's digital face displayed stunned surprise, his perpetual California cool momentarily shattered. Mom recovered first, her shock transforming into defensive anger. How dare you speak to me that way in my own home, after everything your father and I have done for you? Her words came out in a furious rush voice, rising with each syllable. What exactly have you done for me lately, Mom? I asked, remaining standing. Besides, criticize my career, dismiss my achievements, and borrow money you never intend to repay. This is outrageous, she sputtered, turning to Dad for support. James, are you going to let her talk to me like this? Dad surprised everyone by slowly setting down his fork and clearing his throat. Diana, he said quietly, Hannah has been paying our property taxes for the past 2 quarters, and the insurance deductible for my surgery. And several other expenses. Mom's face contorted in betrayal. James, it's true. He continued, his voice gaining strength. The market downturn hit my retirement accounts harder than I admitted, and the medical bills have been substantial. Hannah has been keeping us afloat while we figured things out. Jessica turned to me, her perfectly manicured hand reaching across the table. Hannah, I had no idea. Why didn't you say something earlier? Would you have listened? I asked simply. You've been increasingly absent from family matters. The few times I tried bringing up concerns about Mom and Dad, you changed the subject to hospital politics or your latest vacation plans. Jessica had the grace to look ashamed. I've been distracted lately, I know, but this is serious. If I had known... You didn't want to know, I interrupted, years of suppressed honesty suddenly flooding forth. It was easier to maintain your image as the perfect daughter from a distance, to swoop in for holidays and special occasions, accept the praise and adoration, then return to your life without dealing with the messy reality. That's not fair, Jessica protested, but her objection lacked conviction. You're both being ridiculous, Mom interjected, attempting to regain control of the conversation. We have had some temporary financial adjustments due to your father's retirement and medical situation. Hannah offered to help and we accepted. End of story. You didn't accept help, Mom, I corrected firmly. You asked for loans with vague promises of repayment once things settled down. But each time one bill was paid, another magically appeared. Meanwhile, you've continued your weekly salon appointments, maintained your club memberships, and haven't adjusted your lifestyle at all. How I manage my personal grooming is none of your business, Mom snapped. Someone in this family needs to maintain standards. From the tablet, Tyler's voice joined the fray. Mom, are you serious right now? Hannah just said she's given you guys 30 grand and you're defending your hair appointments. Mom's attention swiveled to the screen. Oh, so now the surf bum has financial advice rich coming from someone who abandoned his education to sell seashell necklaces to tourists. I teach surfing to underprivileged kids and manage the shop's online presence, Tyler corrected. And yeah, even from 3,000 miles away, I can see what's happening here. Hannah's been carrying everyone while still being treated like she's worthless. Nobody said Hannah is worthless. Mom protested, her voice rising in pitch. You literally just told her she'll never be as good as Jessica, Tyler pointed out. I heard it through the tablet speakers in California, Mom. I remained standing, feeling a strange calm settle over me. I don't actually need you to think I'm as good as Jessica. I've spent 32 years trying to earn your approval, and I'm done. What I do need is honesty about this financial situation and respect for my boundaries going forward. Dad nodded slowly. Hannah's right, Diana. We've been taking advantage of her generosity while maintaining pretenses. It's not sustainable or fair. Mom's face crumpled, tears suddenly replacing anger. Whether they were genuine or tactical was impossible to determine after years of emotional manipulation. So you're all ganging up on me now, when I've dedicated my entire life to this family. Nobody's ganging up on you, Mom, I said firmly. But I've emptied my emergency fund and dipped into my business reserves to help you and Dad. Meanwhile, you've continued pretending everything is fine to your friends, criticized my career choices to my face, and compared me unfavorably to Jessica at every opportunity. Jessica set down her wine glass and straightened her shoulders. I think we need complete transparency here. Mom, Dad, exactly how bad is the financial situation? Dad looked uncomfortable but resigned. My retirement portfolio lost about 40% of its value in the market correction last year. The medical expenses from my surgery weren't fully covered by insurance. We've been carrying balances on credit cards for the first time in our marriage. And the house, Jessica pressed. We took out a second mortgage 3 years ago, he admitted quietly, when we helped Tyler with his graduate school tuition. All eyes turned to the tablet where Tyler's expression shifted from righteous indignation to shocked guilt. You said that came from your bonus money, Dad. You never said you mortgaged the house. We didn't want you to worry, Dad said simply. So you lied to Tyler about remortgaging the house for his education while simultaneously making me feel inadequate for not contributing more financially to the family. I summarized the pieces, finally clicking into place. Mom was openly crying now, her carefully applied makeup creating dark rivulets down her flushed cheeks. We've always wanted the best for all of you. Everything we've done has been for this family. Criticizing Hannah constantly was for the family, Tyler challenged. Making her feel inferior to Jessica was somehow helpful. I pushed Hannah because she needed pushing, Mom insisted through tears. Jessica was naturally driven, and you had your father's charm. Hannah always needed extra encouragement. Encouragement? I repeated incredulously. Is that what you call telling me I'll never be good enough? That my career is just drawing pictures? That I'm counting pennies while Jessica achieves greatness? Jessica stood up and moved to my side of the table. Mom, that's not encouragement. That's emotional abuse. I've been so focused on my own life that I didn't see it clearly before, but listening tonight, it's unmistakable. Mom looked genuinely shocked at Jessica's betrayal. You don't understand. Parents have to push their children to achieve their potential. I've achieved my potential, I said firmly. I run a successful design studio that supports me comfortably and apparently has been supporting you and Dad as well. I've won industry recognition and built a client base that respects my work. The fact that you can't see value in anything that doesn't match your narrow definition of success is your limitation, not mine. I picked up my purse from the side table where I'd left it earlier. I'm going home now. I need some space to think about boundaries going forward. You're just going to leave in the middle of dinner? Mom asked incredulously. Yes, I replied simply. I'm putting myself first, probably for the first time in my adult life. I'll call you tomorrow to discuss a financial plan that works for everyone, but I won't be contributing any more money without clear agreements and transparency. Jessica touched my arm. I'll help too. Once I understand the full situation, we can figure out a fair distribution of support. I can send some money too, Tyler offered from the tablet. Not as much as you guys, but something regular to help out. Mom looked between us all, her manipulative tactics failing in the face of our unified position. Dad reached for her hand across the table. Diana, he said gently, we need to accept help with grace and honesty now. Our children are adults with their own lives. We can't keep pretending everything is the way it was 20 years ago. I walked to the door, Jessica following close behind. For the first time in my adult life, I left my parents' home without apologizing, without accepting blame for tension I didn't create, without shrinking myself to maintain their comfort. The night air felt unusually fresh against my skin as I walked to my car, filling my lungs with what felt like the first full breath I'd taken in years. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in months. No midnight anxiety about my parents' finances, no replaying of critical comments in my head, no comparing myself to Jessica's achievements. Just quiet acceptance of my own worth and the liberating knowledge that I had finally spoken my truth. The next morning brought a flood of notifications. 5 missed calls from Mom, 3 from Dad. A lengthy text from Jessica asking to meet for coffee. Multiple messages from Tyler expressing solidarity and suggesting a family therapy session via video call. I responded only to Jessica agreeing to meet at a cafe halfway between our homes. In the week following the dinner confrontation, I focused on myself with an intensity I'd never allowed before. I cleared my schedule of non-urgent appointments, delegated some projects to my assistant, and took long walks in the park near my apartment. Years of putting everyone else's needs before my own had left me disconnected from my own desires and boundaries. Each quiet moment alone felt like rediscovering a part of myself that had been lost. My phone continued to accumulate messages from family members. Mom's initial texts were angry and defensive, full of phrases like, "After everything we've done for you," and "Your father is still recovering, this stress isn't helping." By the third day, her tone shifted to victimhood with tearful voicemails about feeling abandoned and misunderstood. I listened to each message but didn't immediately respond, giving myself permission to process my feelings before engaging. Dad called twice, leaving brief, awkward messages that veered between apology and justification. I should have been more honest about our situation, he admitted in one voicemail, followed immediately by, "But your mother has certain standards she's accustomed to maintaining." It was the same enabling pattern I'd witnessed my entire life, the verbal equivalent of disappearing into his study during moments of conflict. On Thursday morning, I woke to a simple text from him that felt different. "I'm sorry, Hannah. Not just for the money, but for everything. I should have protected you better." The message brought unexpected tears. It wasn't a complete acknowledgement of all the years of emotional neglect, but it was perhaps the most honest communication we'd ever shared. Jessica and I met for coffee on Wednesday, choosing a quiet cafe with outdoor seating. She arrived looking uncharacteristically disheveled, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, designer clothes replaced with jeans and a sweater. The carefully constructed image of success she normally projected was noticeably absent. "You look different," I observed as she sat down across from me. She managed a tired smile. "Haven't been sleeping well since Sunday. Lots to process." She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, a protective gesture I'd never seen from my confidently poised sister. "I've been thinking about what you said about me maintaining the perfect daughter image from a distance." "And?" I prompted when she fell silent. "And you're right," she admitted, eyes fixed on her coffee. "I've been deliberately disconnecting from family issues. It was easier to show up for holidays, accept Mom's praise, and leave before seeing the reality of their situation. Or yours." This vulnerability from Jessica was entirely new territory. Throughout our lives, she had been the golden standard, the flawless achievement machine. Seeing her acknowledge imperfection felt momentarily disorienting, like watching gravity reverse. "I've been doing research since Sunday," she continued, "looking at their financial records, talking to Dad's investment advisor. The situation is worse than they admitted at dinner. They've been living beyond their means for years, counting on Dad's retirement accounts to cover the difference." When the market dropped last year, it wiped out a significant portion of their safety net. And nobody thought to mention this to me before I started paying their bills. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Jessica winced. I should have noticed something was wrong, but I've been dealing with my own issues that I haven't shared with the family. What issues? I asked, genuinely curious. Jessica's life had always appeared flawlessly scripted from the outside. She took a deep breath, her perfectly manicured fingers nervously tracing the rim of her coffee cup. Andrew and I are separating. Have been for 6 months now, though we're keeping it quiet until after his hospital board nomination process concludes. 6 months. I repeated, stunned that such a significant development had remained hidden. Why didn't you tell me? Pride, she admitted with a sad smile. The golden child can't fail at marriage, right? Mom would be devastated. So you've been dealing with separation while taking on a major promotion. That's a lot, Jess. She nodded slowly. The work has been a welcome distraction, honestly. But between that and the marriage counseling we tried initially, I haven't been present for family matters. She reached across the table and took my hand, an uncharacteristically affectionate gesture between us. I had no idea you were shouldering so much with Mom and Dad. I should have been helping. The simple acknowledgement of my burden felt surprisingly healing. For years I had managed family obligations alone while Jessica received credit for being the perfect daughter despite her absence. Having her recognize this imbalance validated my experience in a way I hadn't realized I needed. I'm also realizing how Mom's constant comparisons affected you, Jessica continued. I benefited from being the favorite, so I never challenged it. That was wrong of me. You didn't create the dynamic, I pointed out. Mom and Dad did. But I participated in it, accepted the praise, enjoyed the special treatment, never stood up for you when Mom made those awful comments. She squeezed my hand. I'm sorry, Hannah. Truly sorry. The apology unlocked something tight in my chest. Tears welled unexpectedly, years of hurt finding release in the simple acknowledgement of my experience. Thank you, I managed to say through the emotion. That means a lot. We spent the next 2 hours talking with more honesty than we had in our entire adult lives. Jessica confessed her growing disillusionment with her medical career, the pressure to maintain perfect appearances in her social circle, and her fear of failure driving her to work 70-hour weeks. I shared my struggles building my business while managing our parents, the loneliness of always being the least valued child, and my recent recognition that I had built a life I was actually proud of, despite never receiving family validation. As our coffee grew cold, we worked out a financial plan for supporting our parents that distributed responsibility fairly. Jessica would cover the larger medical expenses through her insurance connections. I would continue managing their monthly bills, but at a significantly reduced contribution, and we would both help them develop a realistic budget aligned with their actual resources. Throughout that week, Tyler called daily from California, our relationship strengthening through late-night conversations that would have been unimaginable before the Sunday dinner confrontation. The charming but self-centered brother of my childhood had matured in ways I hadn't noticed from a distance. I always knew Mom played favorites, he admitted during one call. But I didn't realize how badly she treated you until I heard it directly at dinner. Being the baby of the family meant I got away with everything while you got blamed for everything. It was our normal, I said, surprised by my own lack of bitterness. The emotional honesty of recent days had begun replacing long-held resentment with understanding. It wasn't right, Tyler insisted. And I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. California has given me perspective on a lot of things, including our family dynamics. He told me about his volunteer work teaching underprivileged kids to surf, his growing interest in marine conservation, and his plans to enroll in environmental science courses at the local community college. The path looked nothing like the corporate career our parents had envisioned for him, but his passion was unmistakable. Mom still introduces me as taking a break before business school, he said with a laugh. She can't accept that I'm actually happier earning less money doing meaningful work. That sounds familiar, I replied, thinking of how my mother still referred to my design business as a hobby despite its success. By the end of the week, we had organized a family therapy session with a counselor Tyler found who specialized in family systems and financial issues. The initial session, conducted via video conference to include Tyler, was uncomfortable but productive. Mom alternated between tearful apologies and defensive justifications, while Dad mostly listened, occasionally offering context for financial decisions. The therapist skillfully redirected blame narratives toward constructive problem solving, assigning homework focused on honest communication between sessions. It wasn't an overnight transformation. Mom still occasionally slipped into her critical patterns, particularly when drinking. Dad still sometimes enabled her behavior through silence, but something fundamental had shifted in how we all responded. I no longer absorbed the criticism as truth. Jessica no longer accepted preferential treatment without comment. Tyler no longer used charm to avoid responsibility. For the first time, we began relating to each other as adults with equal value, rather than as players in the predetermined family roles we'd been assigned in childhood. The process was painful but necessary, like physical therapy, after a long immobilization retraining atrophied muscles of authentic connection. The most significant personal change came in my growing comfort with establishing and maintaining boundaries. I developed a clear schedule of when I would visit my parents and what financial support I would provide. When Mom tested these limits, calling with emergencies that proved to be routine expenses, I calmly redirected her to our agreed plan. When Dad attempted to guilt me about reduced financial support, I reminded him of Jessica's contributions and our shared approach to helping them adjust their lifestyle. After years of feeling responsible for everyone else's emotions, I finally recognized that my only responsibility was to communicate honestly and maintain healthy boundaries. The freedom in this realization was exhilarating, spreading beyond family relationships into my work and social connections. I began setting clearer expectations with clients, charging appropriately for additional revisions, and protecting my creative time from constant interruptions. Gradually, sometimes painfully, our family began healing. Not by returning to our previous patterns, but by creating new, healthier ways of relating to each other based on honesty, respect, and authentic connection. 6 months after the confrontation at Sunday dinner, we gathered for Thanksgiving at my parents' home. The changes were subtle but significant to those who knew what to look for. The dining table was set with the good china, but lacked the rigidly formal perfection of previous years. Mom had done the cooking herself rather than ordering from a caterer and pretending she'd made everything from scratch. Dad helped serve the meal, a task he'd always considered beneath his dignity in the past. The most notable change was in my mother's sobriety. After the family therapy sessions revealed the extent to which her drinking exacerbated family conflicts, she had reluctantly agreed to attend AA meetings. 3 months sober, she looked physically healthier with clear eyes and steady hands as she passed serving dishes around the table. "Everything looks wonderful, Mom," I said sincerely, noting the simple but elegant Thanksgiving spread. "Thank you, Hannah," she replied, the old reflexive comparison to Jessica's culinary skills noticeably absent from her response. Dad had experienced his own transformation during these months. His health had improved significantly once he began following his doctor's recommendations rather than minimizing his symptoms. More surprisingly, he had developed an interest in container gardening, converting part of the backyard into a vegetable garden that supplied many of the side dishes for our Thanksgiving meal. "The squash is from your father's garden," Mom mentioned with genuine pride. "He's become quite the farmer in his retirement." Dad's eyes crinkled with pleasure at the acknowledgement. Hannah's graphic design skills came in handy for planning the garden layout. She created a whole planting schedule for me based on Connecticut growing seasons. The casual mention of my professional skills without qualification or comparison felt like a small but meaningful victory. In previous years, any reference to my career would have been undercut with "Hannah's little design projects" or similar diminishing language. Jessica sat beside her new boyfriend, Mark, a kind pediatrician she had met through hospital volunteer work. Their relationship had developed slowly during her separation and eventual divorce from Andrew, a healing connection built on mutual respect rather than social expectations. The performative perfection that had characterized her previous marriage was noticeably absent in their comfortable, authentic interactions. "Mark and I are thinking of downsizing," Jessica mentioned during dinner. "My house is ridiculously large for just the two of us, and the commute is longer than I'd like." "Downsizing," Mom repeated, looking momentarily confused by this departure from Jessica's previously status-conscious decisions. "But your home in Greenwich is so lovely." "It's a status symbol I don't need anymore," Jessica replied simply. "I'd rather have a shorter commute and lower maintenance costs. Maybe use the difference to travel more or increase my retirement contributions." Mom nodded slowly, visibly processing this reprioritization of values. 6 months ago, she would have protested vehemently, concerned about appearances and social standing. Today, she simply said, "That makes practical sense. Your father and I should have made similar decisions years ago." Tyler joined us from California, having flown in for the holiday. His long hair was pulled back neatly, and he wore a casual button-down shirt rather than his typical beachwear, a small concession to Mom's preferences without completely abandoning his authentic style. He had recently completed his first semester of environmental science courses, maintaining a 4.0 GPA while continuing his work with the surf therapy program. "I've been accepted into the marine conservation internship for spring," he announced during dinner. "It's competitive, only 6 spots annually." "That's wonderful, Tyler," Mom said, her smile genuine. "You seem to have found your calling." The simple acknowledgement of his non-traditional path without criticism or comparison was perhaps the clearest evidence of her ongoing efforts to change established patterns. My own life had transformed significantly during these 6 months as well. With clear boundaries established around family obligations, I had been able to focus more energy on my business, expanding into environmental branding projects that combined my design skills with growing corporate interest in sustainability. The creative fulfillment and financial success of these projects had further validated my career choice, making me less vulnerable to lingering doubt planted by years of criticism. Even more significantly, I had begun dating Eric, a landscape architect I met through a client project. Unlike previous relationships where I had unconsciously sought partners who reinforced my family's critical perspective, Eric appreciated my creative perspective and professional accomplishments. He joined us for Thanksgiving, fitting easily into family conversations, without the awkward tension that had characterized past holiday gatherings. As we finished the main course, Mom disappeared into the kitchen, returning with a small cake decorated with a simple "congratulations" in icing. "Hannah, your father and I wanted to acknowledge your recent achievement," she said, placing the cake in front of me. "The environmental branding award your firm received is a significant honor." I stared at the cake in disbelief. My parents had never before celebrated any of my professional achievements with anything more than cursory acknowledgement. The simple gesture, while modest compared to the celebrations that had accompanied Jessica's accomplishments over the years, represented a profound shift in family dynamics. "We're very proud of you," Dad added, his voice warm with genuine feeling. "You've built something valuable entirely through your own efforts and vision." Unexpected tears welled in my eyes. "Thank you." I managed emotion, making further words difficult. Eric squeezed my hand under the table, understanding the significance of the moment. Jessica raised her water glass. "To Hannah, whose creativity and persistence have earned her well-deserved recognition in her industry." "To Hannah," everyone echoed, including Mom, whose eyes showed a mixture of genuine pride and lingering regret for years of missed opportunities to celebrate my journey. The remainder of the evening unfolded with a natural warmth that had been absent from previous family gatherings. Conversations flowed without the underlying current of competition and criticism that had been our family's emotional background noise for decades. We shared stories, laughed at old memories now viewed through more compassionate perspectives, and spoke honestly about future plans and concerns. As we prepared to leave, Mom pulled me aside for a private moment in the hallway. "Hannah," she began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I know a simple apology doesn't erase years of unfair treatment. But I want you to know that I see you now, truly see you, and I'm sorry it took me so long." The straightforward acknowledgement offered without excuses or qualifications felt like the closing of a long, painful chapter. "Thank you, Mom," I replied, accepting the apology without needing to minimize or deny the hurt that preceded it. As Eric and I drove home later that evening, I felt a profound sense of peace I had never experienced after family gatherings. The freedom I had found in finally standing up for myself had initiated ripples of change throughout our family system, creating space for more authentic connections and healing long-standing wounds. "You seem lighter," Eric observed as we traveled the familiar route back to my apartment. "More present." I agreed, realizing the truth in his observation. For years, I had carried the invisible weight of inadequacy, constantly striving to earn approval that never came. In releasing that burden, I had discovered my own inherent worthiness, independent of external validation or comparison. The journey hadn't been easy, and our family's healing remained a work in progress. Mom still occasionally slipped into old patterns Dad sometimes reverted to enabling behaviors, and old hurts could be triggered by innocent comments. But we were moving forward with growing awareness and intentionality, breaking intergenerational patterns of emotional manipulation and conditional love. My greatest revelation was understanding that standing up for myself hadn't been merely an act of self-defense in a heated moment. It had been an act of love not just for myself, but for my entire family. By refusing to participate any longer in destructive patterns, I had created an opportunity for authentic connection based on mutual respect, rather than prescribed roles and expectations. As we pulled into my apartment complex, I felt profound gratitude for the unexpected gifts that had emerged from that painful confrontation 6 months ago. The courage to speak my truth had unlocked doors I hadn't known existed, leading to a life characterized by authentic relationships, clear boundaries, and genuine self-acceptance. The perfect family image we had projected for decades had been shattered, but in its place, something far more valuable had emerged. Real people connecting with honesty, compassion, and growing awareness. Imperfect, sometimes stumbling, but genuine in ways our previous picture-perfect facade had never allowed. Have you ever had to stand up to family expectations that were crushing your spirit? What gave you the courage to finally speak your truth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you found value in my journey, please like this video and subscribe to join our community of people healing from family dynamics and learning to stand in their own power. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for authentic relationships to thrive. Thank you for witnessing my story, and I wish you courage on your own path to self-worth beyond comparison.